It is One Soccer today for this Tuesday, January the 23rd, and it's like a Christmas dinner where you put the grown-ups at a table and then you have the kids' table. That's what today's episode is, as Gareth Wheeler unable to join us. It's Adam Jenkins, it's Oliver Platt, and it's Jordan Wilson here with you. We got a jam-packed show today, gentlemen, with a lot of stories that could probably be the A block, the first block of the show, except for one small little wrinkle. You see, yesterday we taped the show around noon, and by the time we got off, everyone put their computers away. We were getting ready to get on with the rest of our days, and I think it maybe was 10 minutes later that we got a bombshell. And that bombshell was the fact that Gareth Wheeler put a really nice 3 or 4 minute monologue together about the first 100 days of Alison Walker's tenure, what was going to be at stake for the new General Secretary of Canada Soccer. And then we realized that we should maybe be following footballers and football admins on LinkedIn, because Alison Walker put a post out saying that after a difficult conversation with friends, family, and loved ones, she informed Canada Soccer on Saturday, 2 days before her tenure was supposed to begin, that she would not be taking the job as General Secretary. So here's what we have to do, and that is try and put this into perspective. I'm not going to ask for answers because a lot of the questions remain the same as they were about 24 hours ago, but we do have to try and classify this, Oliver Platt, and that is as simple as, on the scale of things that Canada Soccer have had to deal with since One Soccer has even existed and well before it, how devastating a blow is this for the CSA?
What would that scale look like? Would
it would be a very long
boycotting
scale.
A game be like the 10, or I don't know.
Probably close.
Yeah, look, it's a big blow. Firstly, in terms of what exactly happens here, I don't think we can really tell you much, and there's a limited amount of information that's been put out. It would be unwise, I think, to speculate in a situation like this when someone is citing personal reasons. So we wish her all the best, and it's unfortunate, obviously, that Alison Walker won't be able to take up this job. In terms of how big a blow it is, it's a nightmare. It's exactly what they didn't need for a couple of reasons. Firstly, you just have the overall public perception reason, which is that Canada Soccer is at pretty much an all-time low right now, just in terms of the level of faith that the public has in them, the perception from the outside of the organization's competence, and what they're actually trying to rebuild now, which is that belief that they can build a good soccer program in this country, that there's new leadership coming in, that they're turning over a new page, and there's reasons to be excited about the future going into 2026 and the important tournaments even that we've got before then. So this is just more bad news that they didn't need. So that's the first part of it that's obviously very much unwanted. And then secondly, the more important part, because perception is what it is at the end of the day, is the practicalities and the situation it puts them in now, which is some really, really tight timelines when it comes to key tournaments, key events, and the decisions that need to be made between now and then. You've got an Olympic Games this summer, you've got a Copa America this summer. You need a general secretary in place, and you need, obviously, a men's head coach in place. That the final decision, I think, will rest with that general secretary. So, I hope that they'll be in a position now where they'll be able to maybe go back to some of the finalists who didn't get the job in the initial search, and we won't have to go through the entire process again. It can't take 3-4 months like it did last time. It's got to be quicker than that. So hopefully there's already some names that they can revisit that are suitable for the job. And then I also wonder whether or not this may kind of push them in a certain direction when it comes to filling some of these key positions, particularly the men's national team head coach. Do they go with someone who's a bit more kind of clued into Canadian soccer, has a bit more experience in Canadian soccer? Just because I think if you appoint someone from the outside, there's more of a need for time, right? There's more of a need for a settling in process to get to grips with everything, to understand the vast Canadian soccer ecosystem. And that time simply may not exist if you want to have someone in place by ready for the Copa America in the summer, which starts on June 20th, I believe. So will it influence their decision making in that way? That kind of remains to be seen. But what were already very tight deadlines and timelines in terms of some of the key decisions they've got to make with leadership here have just got even tighter in a way that this organization desperately did not need.
Jordan Wilson.
The only analogy or a metaphor, I agree with Ollie tenfold, but the only thing I can think of, my wife just recently had to get her passport. And 10 years you have to get, obviously. Well, you should get 10 years. I don't know. The people that do 5, I'm just like, That's not enough time. Just get the
Good
10.
passport talk with Jordan Wilson.
But if you go and do that process, everyone knows how tedious it is. You have to have 2 friends that aren't family come and sign off that you're actually a human. You go through that process. Imagine going through it, the last final bit, and then you did something incorrectly. You have to start again. This is how I felt when I saw the news. I understand things can happen. I understand that people should prioritize their health. I understand that like there is sometimes you have an Allison that's going to be a general secretary, and then things don't work out. But in terms of the need, it's just like we already had something in place and we have to start the process again. I personally feel like as a fan of football in Canada and soccer in Canada, 2023, we were talking about general secretary, we were talking about a men's head coach, and both those positions weren't filled. And players were saying, it's time for new blood to come in. And we're into 2024 now, and I just don't see the light at the end of the tunnel yet. I'm looking at just the timeline that it's already take for us to be here, and I don't think that we're further ahead. Maybe I don't know. I don't know the thought. I don't know the hiring process. But in terms of getting things figured out before the Women's Olympics, before Copa America in the summer, and we are hosting a World Cup in 2026. It's just like in the football world, I know things move. I know that things sometimes take time. But right now, we're 2.5 years away from hosting a World Cup. And I'm just like, we haven't really made progress in the last few months. Now these few months are turning into a year. And is this year going to turn into 2 years? Basically, what I'm trying to say, my long-winded monologue, is that I hope we can wrap things up fast because obviously we need that. But I just don't see how we're doing that. It seemed like we were taking a step in the right direction. And now we have to go and fill out the passport form all over.
The lasting takeaway: 10-year passport applications only.
10.
If you want to follow Jordan
5.
Wilson's school
No
of thought. I don't have an MBA, but how I feel like these situations make me feel, and to use an analogy like Jordan, this to me, like sometimes the title of general secretary, some people can see that, especially those who aren't super clued in on the ins and outs, or even keep really their fingers on the pulse of what this means. The general secretary is quite honestly the chief executive officer of this business. Is kind of like launching a new iPhone and then the CEO steps down 6 months before it's due. That's how it feels to me as the World Cup gets closer and closer and closer. There is an interim transition leadership team who are going to oversee the day-to-day finances. It's not like there aren't people making decisions, but when you are bringing in someone to lead the organization into all of these tournaments, and the tournament being the World Cup in 2026, every day that you don't have that person in place learning the organization, because it's not like they're going to come in and start saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. They need to be bed in. They need to get used to the organization. They need to learn things. The longer that can is kicked down the sidewalk, the harder it is for lasting change. Let's not forget that there is an ongoing labor dispute with the players, and they do not want that hanging over their head heading into another World Cup. So for the sake that we do not have any more answers, we simply just wanted to get the news out there and get some commentary from the boys on it. I do see Oliver Platt's finger like this. It's the one thing to go.
I just had one more thing to add.
Is it an analogy?
Before we move on. It's not an analogy, unfortunately, but this is why I think you have to be a little bit more hesitant when there's all these calls to kind of burn down an organization. And it's like, I get it. There was a lot of mistakes made. There were people who didn't do a good enough job. There was upgrades needed throughout that organization at Canada Soccer. We all agree with that. We all understand that. But sometimes the best way to go about getting that kind of change and that kind of progress isn't just to raise everything to the ground, because you end up with a situation like this where there's just kind of a big void and no direction and no one really knowing. There are people there who are trying, and I get that, but a real lack of kind of, a fully built out organization that can take these decisions and put us back in the right direction. And I think we find ourselves in a situation like we are now. You just have to be careful when you're going through these transition periods, how you handle it. And I think the way we've handled it has been kind of extreme, and we'll have to pick up the pieces here.
We have another absolute rocket of a news drop to bring you next, and it's presented by Visa. It is our Visa Women's Football Report, and gentlemen, I think any other day, this might be the lead story on the program. That is, of course, the news that Jessie Fleming is reportedly returning to North America and will join what has now become Canada's official satellite sister city of Portland, because it is becoming very, very, very Canadian. Christine Sinclair announced on a one-year deal yesterday. Of course, Max Crepeau and Kamal Miller with the Timbers, but Jessie Fleming on a huge huge deal, a record deal from Chelsea, £250,000. This is as star-studded as Portland could go out and get, and it proves just how hot of a commodity Jessie Fleming is, Oliver Platt. Not to mention it gives you an answer why you couldn't find out why she wasn't playing against Manchester United the other day.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. This, I guess, explains that one. Yeah, it's a massive transfer. Like it's one of the biggest, I think, for a Canadian player in a long time. That transfer fee, like you mentioned, Adam, an NWSL record, which is remarkable. This league's been around a good few years now. It's been growing. So many good players in it, and Jessie Fleming has commanded the highest price tag reportedly. I believe it's also, in all likelihood, a top 10 transfer of all time in the women's game in terms of that transfer fee as well. So this is a really significant investment from the Portland Thorns, and I think what it gives Jessie Fleming is basically that opportunity to really be the star, the true face of a team, or at least one of two or three. And I don't think she ever quite got that at Chelsea. I think Chelsea, look, I don't want to denigrate it at all. It's been a fantastic place for her to begin her professional career out of college. She's got the chance to play under one of the best coaches in the women's game, some of the best players in terms of her teammates, a club that does everything at the highest standard, that has won a lot of titles. So I think that will have been a great experience that puts her in a good place going forwards in her career. But I also think because of the quality around her, she was always kind of one of many at Chelsea. And I think it's particularly easy with Jessie Fleming because she is, one, she's really versatile. She can play in a bunch of different spots. Two, she's a great professional. She never complains, does everything the coach asks, great teammate. It's kind of easy maybe when you have a lot of stars to pigeonhole her more as like the team player who does things, for the team, sacrifices her own game for the team, and doesn't necessarily get that starring role on as regular a basis as her quality, I believe, could command. So I think going to Portland when you lay down that kind of money, she's going to get that. It's a Canadian GM, obviously, and Karina LeBlanc, who's making that decision. She, like I said, there's other great players in Portland. She's not going to be the only one, but she will be one of a very small number who are really the centerpieces of this team, and that's incredibly exciting. I think if you're Jessie Fleming, if you're a Canadian women's national team fan, to see her get that kind of role on a big club.
Oh, of course, broken by Tom Gary of The Telegraph, who's plugged in just about more than anyone in the women's game across the pond. The most expensive signing ever by an American women's team. And Jordo, this makes it interesting for me too. I'm curious your take on this. Janine Beckie, with her injury last year, she hasn't really been able to participate in match play in this new evolution of Bev Priestman's system. How valuable will that be for Janine Beckie and Jessie Fleming to be playing together regularly with the Thorns and build that continuity back?
Yeah, it's huge. I also think too, you're getting the best in Christine Sinclair, and then now you have the brightest with Jessie Fleming, and also the future. But just to Ollie's point quickly about Jessie Fleming being an attacking player, I think also times two, it's broken down in a team. When you're an attacking player and you're used to expressing yourself, whether that might be trying to thread that needle or that pass that most people won't even try, and it's maybe not working, you have to be able to be free and to be able to express yourself. I think the biggest thing with Jessie Fleming and Janine Beckie, of course, these two players are going to kind of develop that chemistry more and more, but it's just an environment that they can go play and be big dogs. And I think that's so important for Jessie Fleming when she's coming back into the Canada form. But Janine Beckie, we know what we're going to get. I think that they're already acclimated and they know each other, but just that extra of checking in every day and being around each other, when they come into Canada's camp, it'll be dynamite. So love to see it. It's a huge move. I'm excited for Jessie because she just has a lot of quality. And I think also she controls the tempo of how Canada plays when they do meet up. Whether they have a really important game, it usually kind of falls on her shoulders if she's going to make those final passes. So it's great to see. I'm glad she did it.
It's going to make the Cascadia Derby all the more impressive. Portland Thorns, the now returned to the OG Seattle reign with Quinn and Jordan Huitema as well against Sinclair, Beckie, and Fleming. It is a Canadian national team supporters' delight to watch those matches. We're excited for it, and we congratulate Jessie Fleming on the massive move to return to North America.